Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world?
And then we have a big challenger.
If Eala, can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? The sky's the limit on the court, off the court.
Hard Rock Stadium in Miami just handed women's tennis its most important data point of 2026. 15,000 Filipino fans made Sabalenka cry, and buried inside that crowd pressure story is a player ranked 29th, drawing 196,000 pre-tournament press conference views against the world number one's 9,000, still without a Grand Slam quarterfinal on her resume and improving toward clay. Tournament director James Blake restructured court assignments around Eala's fanbase, a decision that operationally displaced Sabalenka before a single ball was struck. Not sentiment, a measurable commercial signal about where the sport's gravitational center has already moved. Eala's 3-hour 20-minute comeback against Siegmund, surrendering the first set from 3-0 up, 4 set points gone, then closing both remaining sets, 6-3, 6-3, proved the physical conditioning she flagged as her 2025 off-season priority had genuinely arrived. Laban Alex filled that stadium for every minute of it. A fan base organized enough to move scheduling decisions will follow her into April's clay swing in Linz, into Roland Garros, into surfaces she hasn't yet unlocked. Subscribe for forensic tennis analysis that tracks where this trajectory actually lands. The crowd economics, the ranking structure, and the surface math all converge on one conclusion, and the deep dive begins now. Before a single ball was struck at the 2026 Miami Open, something unusual had already happened. James Blake, the tournament director, a former world number 4, publicly acknowledged that his scheduling decisions had been shaped around a 20-year-old Filipino player seeded 31st. Not around Aryna Sabalenka, the world number 1 and defending champion. Not around Coco Gauff, the hometown favorite. Around Alex Eala and the human wave that follows her. Florida is home to more than 188,000 Filipino Americans. The Miami metropolitan area alone accounts for over 21,500 of them, with organized fan groups traveling from Jacksonville, Tampa, and Orlando each time Eala steps onto Florida soil. Blake put it plainly, he needed Eala on stadium court because her fan base is global in origin and staggering in volume, generating an atmosphere that no outer court could physically contain without a logistical crisis. Sabalenka was moved off her preferred setup as a direct consequence. She went on record saying she was actually really shocked at the idea of her scheduling being altered, a remarkable admission from a player who had spent 2 years being treated as the undisputed center of women's tennis gravity. Beyond crowd management, Blake was administering a shift in the sport's commercial center of mass, one that neither the WTA nor Hard Rock Stadium had fully anticipated when they built the season calendar. Laban is a Tagalog word, translated directly, it means fight. In Filipino sport, it carries a weight that goes beyond simple encouragement, the sound of a country that has historically watched boxing champions and basketball players carry its national identity, suddenly discovering that a 20-year-old woman on a tennis court is doing the same thing. Here is where the title of this video demands forensic precision. 15,000 Filipino fans made Sabalenka cry, but not in the way a casual viewer might assume. Sabalenka and Eala never shared a court at the 2026 Miami Open. The cry is not a literal tearful moment caught on a stadium camera. It is something more structurally significant. The quiet professional recognition, visible in court reassignments and press conference analytics, that a player ranked 28 spots below her had generated an attention economy Sabalenka could not replicate through tennis dominance alone. When a world number 1 gets bumped off stadium court because a 31st seed's fan base is too large to accommodate elsewhere, that is institutional disruption. An institutional disruption for a competitor of Sabalenka's pride and precision registers as a different kind of hurt. The numbers confirm the scale. Eala's pre-tournament Australian Open press conference drew 196,000 views. Sabalenka's, for the same event, drew 9,000. Former American pros Sam Querrey, John Eisner, and Steve Johnson dissected this gap on the Nothing Major podcast, with Querrey asking openly, "Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco?" Johnson's response was unambiguous. Yes, it's insane. The crowd she's getting right now all over the world is insane. Jessica Pegula, who beat Eala in the 2025 Miami semifinal, described her experience in the stadium that day. The whole crowd was against me. I was like, what on earth is going on? Where did these people come from? When Eala's fans chant Laban Alex, completing a cultural transaction that began in March 2025 when Eala, ranked 140th and holding a wild card, defeated Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and five-time Grand Slam champion Iga Swiatek in sequence. The chant is not directed at Sabalenka. The chant's effect on Sabalenka's institutional standing is a byproduct, not a target. Swiatek hit 32 unforced errors in that 2025 quarterfinal. Eala hit 12. A country that had never produced a top 100 tennis player watched those numbers in real time, and the fans who descended on Miami in 2026 arrived carrying the full weight of what those numbers meant. March 19, 2026, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens. Alexandra Eala walks onto stadium court for her round of 64 match against Laura Siegmund, a 37-year-old German veteran ranked 53rd in the world, a former Stuttgart Open champion with 16 years of professional experience behind her. The crowd filling those seats does not wait for a reason to make noise. They arrive already loud. Over the next 3 hours and 20 minutes, however, Eala gives them something more than enthusiasm to sustain. She gives them a match that requires every second of it. Eala opens with clinical aggression, moving to a 3-0 lead in the first set. Everything she has worked on since leaving Miami 2025, the fitness, the baseline construction, the left-handed serve angle that pulls opponents wide and opens the court, is functioning precisely as designed. Siegmund then digs into a marathon fourth game, saves 2 break points, and finally holds. From that single hold, the momentum of the entire first set reverses. Siegmund levels at 3-3, and a baseline war begins that neither player can decisively end. By the time they reach the tiebreak, Eala has held 4 separate set points across the closing stages and converted none of them. Siegmund, carrying 3 decades of professional composure into those critical moments, surges ahead 5-2 in the breaker. Eala claws back to 6-5, needing 1 point to take the set. Siegmund wins. The next 3. First set gone, 7-6, after an hour and 20 minutes of tennis. A less grounded player breaks at this moment. Eala had the set in her hands 4 times and watched it dissolve. The crowd, rather than deflating, intensifies. Laban Alex fills the stadium with the specific energy of people who had studied this player's biography long before arriving in Miami, who knew she had moved at 13 to Rafael Nadal's academy in Mallorca because Philippine tennis had no professional infrastructure capable of producing a top 30 player, and who understood that composure under pressure was not a personality trait, but a skill she had spent 7 years deliberately building. The second set begins with a recognizable shift in Eala's construction. She breaks Siegmund in the third game, moving ahead 3-1. Unlike the first set, where a single Siegmund hold collapsed the entire lead, this advantage holds. Eala manages the gap with authority, keeps the German on the defensive from the baseline, and closes the second set 6-3. Her left-handed serve out wide to the ad court is the central mechanism. Siegmund had faced left-handed opponents across her career, but could not adequately replicate the specific angle in pre-match practice. Eala's serve lands near the sideline and forces Siegmund into weak recovery positions. The forehand into the open court follows immediately, compressing the point before Siegmund can reset. This is not improvisation. It is a tactical sequence she had refined across 7 months of tour experience since her Miami breakthrough. The third set mirrors the second in structure. An early break builds to a 4-1 cushion. Siegmund takes 1 game back. Eala closes it 6-3. Total match time, 3 hours and 20 minutes. The longest of her WTA career at that stage. Post-match, rather than describing exhaustion, she offered something more instructive. It definitely was close, very demanding, physically and mentally, but that was one of my goals last year after this tournament, to improve physically, and here I am, fresh as a flower. The fitness she had explicitly targeted in her offseason had been tested over 200 minutes of professional tennis against a veteran opponent, and it held. This detail matters structurally. Without the conditioning improvements made between March 2025 and March 2026, the second and third sets become much more contested. The physical drop after a 90-minute opening set is precisely where players in their first year inside the top 30 begin to fracture. The crowd sustained "Laban Alex" without interruption for the full duration. Not during the first set tiebreak, not during the early exchanges of the second set. Its effect on opponents is documented. At the Australian Open 2 months earlier, Alicia Parks admitted the crowd had distracted her so severely in the opening set that she was bageled 6-0 before managing to regroup and eventually win the match. The chants are not background noise. For the player receiving them, over 3 hours of continuous vocal support from an organized, disciplined fan base, the psychological effect is measurable. And for the player on the other side of the net, its effect is equally real. Aryna Sabalenka is, by every conventional metric, the best women's tennis player on the planet right now. Entering the 2026 Miami final, her season record stood at 21-1. She had won Indian Wells without dropping a set, avenged her Australian Open final defeat to Rybakina at Indian Wells, then avenged it again in Miami's semifinal. Across 5 Miami matches, she surrendered 0 sets. Her career hard-court record, 20 of her 23 titles on the surface, confirms that Hard Rock Stadium should feel, philosophically and logistically, like home territory. In one specific moment, it did. After her 4th-round victory over Jung Chin-wen, a section of Brazilian fans in the stadium, drawn by her engagement to Greek-Brazilian entrepreneur Georgios Frangoulis, cheered her with warmth that visibly moved her. Her response went viral. "That's super special. You guys bring the best support. I picked the right fiancé." The moment was genuine, widely covered, and warmly received across social media. A measurable gap separates that moment from what Eala generated, however. Sabalenka's Brazilian support at a single match produced a post-game quote. Eala's Filipino support restructured the tournament's court assignment logic before competition began, sustained for 3 hours and 20 minutes through a comeback against a veteran opponent, and was assessed by former top 10 players on an international platform as a draw already exceeding both Sabalenka and Goff in raw crowd magnetism. The ranking algorithm does not measure this. Cultural gravity operates on different rules, and in Miami in March 2026, Eala's gravitational pull was larger than the world number ones. A player of Sabalenka's competitive precision registers this kind of displacement clearly. Being moved off stadium court by a scheduling decision driven by someone ranked 28 spots below her is not a neutral administrative detail. Being outpaced by a factor of more than 20 in pre-tournament press conference views at a shared Grand Slam is not a comfortable data point. The cry the title references, the emotional weight that 15,000 Filipino fans and their "Laban Alex" chants introduced into Miami's power structure, is this recognition that the sport's attention economy had reorganized itself around a player Sabalenka outranks on paper, and there was no forehand winner or tiebreak save that could reverse it. 2 days after the Siegmund Marathon, Eala returned to Stadium Court for her round of 32 match against Magda Linette, the Polish veteran who had just eliminated Iga Swiatek in the second round, removing any prospect of an Eala-Swiatek rematch on these courts. Fatigue was the consensus expectation going in. The Siegmund match had been the longest of Eala's career, and Linette carried momentum from a high-profile upset. Instead, Eala came out with aggressive intent from the opening game, her composure fully intact. She closed the first set 6-3, her left-handed serve generating the same wide angles that Linette's preparation could not neutralize. The second set extended into a tiebreak after Linette rallied from behind, but Eala surged to a 6-1 lead in the breaker and closed it 7-6-2. The recovery between matches had been complete. The conditioning she had described as her primary 2025 off-season objective had produced a player capable of absorbing 3 hours and 20 minutes against a seasoned campaigner on Thursday and returning 48 hours later at full operational intensity on Saturday. This physical evolution is the sharpest distinction between the wild card who arrived in Miami 2025 ranked 140th and the 31st seed who arrived in 2026 with a first-round bye and a fan base that fills stadiums on 4 continents. The WTA, recognizing the commercial momentum Eala had generated, announced the Philippine Women's Open in November 2025, a new WTA 125 event, the country's first professional women's tennis tournament. Tickets for the final sold out before Eala had even confirmed her participation. She later described it as the highlight of her year to that point. Having the tournament at home was such a big thing for me just because it's such a milestone for women's tennis in the Philippines and tennis in the Philippines in general. Her Instagram following sits at nearly 1 million, more than double that of established players like Jessica Pegula, Madison Keys, and Amanda Anisimova. A day-in-the-life video posted by the Indian Wells tournament during the 2026 BNP Paribas Open became its most-watched YouTube content of the entire 2-week event, by a distance that wasn't close. Longtime Filipino sports journalist TJ Manotoc framed the cultural mechanism for front office sports with a single historical reference. The country has been hungry for the next Manny Pacquiao. When he was at his peak, life stopped. Eala has activated that same national reflex in a sport the Philippines had never previously produced a top 100 player in. Miami 2026 is not the ceiling. Eala exits the tournament ranked in the mid-40s after losing 270 points from her 2025 semifinal defense, but with a performance record, 2 wins against quality opponents, 1 loss to a player ranked 14th in the world, that signals continued upward pressure on the ranking structure. The clay season opens in April in Linz, a surface she has explicitly identified as her next proving ground. Roland Garros follows. Wimbledon follows that. Wherever she competes next, the fans will organize, the flags will appear, and Laban Alex will fill whatever venue she walks into. Those chants don't follow Sabalenka, they follow Eala, but their effect on the institution Sabalenka leads is inescapable. The sport's scheduling logic, its press conference metrics, its commercial energy, all of it is quietly reorganizing around a new center of gravity. Sabalenka will win titles. The record books will reflect her dominance. The crowd noise, though, is pointing somewhere else. If you have followed women's tennis for any length of time, you already know the rankings are a lagging indicator. They reflect where a player has been, not necessarily where momentum is building. What happened in Miami in March 2026, the scheduling disruption, the 3-hour 20-minute comeback, the chants that sustained a stadium for the full duration of it, functions as a leading indicator, pointing in one direction with increasing clarity. Forensic tennis analysis means tracking the evidence before the consensus catches up with it. If you want coverage that follows this trajectory match by match, surface by surface, and ranking point by ranking point, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification so you never miss a breakdown. Each upload goes deeper than the headline, built on verified facts rather than speculation. The clay courts of Europe are next. Eala is already on her way. The analysis continues.